Okay. I just had a wonderful flow, as you could tell from my facial expression, right? I was all into it, but you couldn't hear me. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Great, 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 great. So I'll just pick back up. That's what you can do with a great flow. You just pick back up. And I just wanted to say we have some folks with us who haven't been with us for a while. And Iranetta is back with us. How you doing, Iranetta?
I am doing well. Glad to be back with you guys.
Yeah, glad to see you. We got Fanon Rucker. You got that lightsaber beside you somewhere, bro? How you doing, man?
You know what? It's charging right now. But
Charging.
before the
Okay.
end of the show, I'm going to press the button and it's going to light up.
Okay, good. I want to see that. And as always, and let me move that graphic out of his face. We got Kevin Aldridge with us. What's up, Kevin?
What's up, man? Hey, for now, we gonna need them Jedi skills, man. We in the dark times of the Empire, brother.
I agree. I agree. Although I will offer to you, my lightsaber is red, so we're gonna have to guess which side I'm rolling with.
Okay. Oh no, not another one. Not. Well, if people are catching it, this will be a great transition, though, because I want to talk about something local here. There's lots of stuff on deck. May hit some national issues later in the show. Of course, you got the inauguration coming up on Monday, but some late breaking news. I think people uh, may have an opinion about is the fact that Mayor Avtab Pureval went on a podcast recently, and he said that basically that he is going to follow the Trump administration's lead on immigration. You know, I read through the article, and the article just gave you more details about what was said in the podcast. And basically says, listen, I'm not picking political fights. Matter of fact, let me see if I can pull it up here for you. We can scroll through it from Cincinnati.com. There it is. Pureval. Cincinnati will follow Trump's administration on immigration. And so immediately I'm thinking, isn't Cincinnati a sanctuary city, or did we used to be, or what exactly does that mean moving forward? So again, I want to get the crew's reaction. So what is your initial reaction? But also thinking about a couple things. This is a Democrat city in a red state. You've got the Trump administration coming in. Their number one campaign promise was to be tough on immigration. They're going to have the biggest mass deportation the country's ever seen. And you got Avtar Pureval saying this. So I want to get your initial thoughts on it.
I'm not surprised that this is the position, at least the public position, that's being taken. Let's be honest. As you just said, we're a blue city in a red state in what is essentially is now a red country, and all eyes are going to be on any of those cities and any of those counties and those law enforcement officials who deliberately and publicly resist the administration's efforts to do anything. And what does he not want? He said, we don't need this kind of fight. We got other stuff we're working on. So at least from a public statement standpoint, y'all go ahead, do what you do, pass what laws you want to pass. You're not going to get any big resistance from us. I think it was a safe position, and I can't say that I'm that surprised, although I'm a little surprised there was any statement about it made at all.
Yeah, I agree a lot there with what Fanon had to say. I mean, if you look at what the mayor said, he sort of feels like it's a losing battle. Like any resistance would be a losing battle that the city would try to put up anyway. You know, I felt when the city did the sanctuary city designation, I think when a lot of cities did it, it was more symbolic than practically actionable. I mean, what they were essentially saying is, yeah, we're not going to actively be going out looking for people who are here illegally. And it sounds like the mayor is sort of saying the same thing, that they're not going to have any involvement as it pertains to the federal enforcement of immigration policy. Now, a lot will depend on what Trump begins to ask of local jurisdictions, and we'll see if the mayor and other people change their tune. If in fact Trump starts to round up illegals and it starts to take city of Cincinnati police resources, it'll be interesting to see what the mayor has to say at that particular point. The other thing that I think is this highlights what the tragedy is of not having any sort of mayoral opponent for AFTAB this coming November. Right now, as it stands, Mayor Pureval is running unopposed for mayor. That means he has no Democratic or Republican challengers coming at him for the November election. And I think that's bad for Cincinnati. And this is precisely one of those reasons. When you've got an unopposed mayoral candidate making statements like this, if you don't agree with that, if you're a Democrat in the city of Cincinnati and you don't agree with that, where's your alternative voice who's going to say, hey, no, I absolutely want a mayor who's going to stand up and stand up to and withhold these sanctuary city designation that we came up with 7 years ago or whatever that is. And we want the fight. We want the smoke. You don't have that alternative at present. And so I think that's one of the unfortunate things about at this point having no contested mayor race.
I think the only thing that I would add is I don't think that it is that this sentiment at this point, at least being to Fanon's point, the public sentiment, I don't think that this is going to be uncommon among others in the country. I think that, recognizing that in many instances, the blue cities and blue states are in the minority. I don't know that you're not going to see more and more that will say we don't plan to be the resistors, because you don't know what that looks like. And for those that have aspirations to do other things, it's also possible that they don't want to cause unnecessary attention on themselves. So I think it's very interesting to see where it goes next. We don't know yet the extent of what he is saying he is going to do. I'm talking about the gentleman that's going to be going to the White House. And so we don't know the extent of what that looks like yet. And so maybe there will be a change of heart or a change of thought once we know how that impacts the individual cities. But I don't think that the mayor's sentiment or what he's vocalized at this point, since he felt the need to vocalize it, I don't think that it's uncommon.
So I think, excuse me, what people need to recognize also is, in any battle, in any engagement, there's a party that has the upper hand, that has the greater weight of resources. Now, that's not to say that you never go up against Goliath. David and Goliath is a common theme that we see in politics, that we see in battles, that we see in athletics and sport. I mean, all the way around. But you got to measure every single time. Is this the battle I want to go on the battlefield for? Is this the battle I want to take all my resources and fight? There's no doubt that in a fight between the federal government and the city of Cincinnati, who has the bigger sword, who has the most resources, who has the greater weight of authority, no question about it. So maybe on this just ain't the battle that we want to send all our resources and fight about, at least not publicly. And so for those who may be critical about it, I offer that as well. In every situation, you got to ask, is this the battle I want to engage in? And I think that that's probably not the one that we want to engage in on that kind of level.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
That's okay. If I can also add to that as well. And I think that again is the travesty of where we are right now, because we don't know how many of those battles are coming up and how many of those battles we're going to have to take those same positions simply because the person that is in the White House has the upper hand and the folks that he's surrounding himself with have all of the resources. And so this is only the beginning of what a long 4 years is going to look like.
Yeah. I think it may also be somewhat of a calculation that AFTAB might be making that, Donald Trump might not even be able to pull this off to begin with. So why even try to make a fight out of it if you don't believe that this is even something that he's going to be capable of executing? So he may be taking sort of a wait and see approach. Like I said, I think a lot of this is going to depend on what this looks like when it begins to take shape. And I think when you see how this mass deportation, if it happens, is rolled out, how it's affecting people, I think there's going to be increasing political pressure on the mayor, the president, and others around the country if this doesn't look right. If it looks bad, if it doesn't look, if it looks the way that most people anticipate this is going to look, which is bad, breaking up families, tearing up communities, there's going to be a lot of political pressure, and you're not going to be able to just sit back if you're the mayor and say, hey, we don't want to pick a fight, because people are going to force you. Voters, constituents are going to force you to say something and take a stand on this issue. So he can say that now because nothing, Trump hasn't been in office. The program hasn't been rolled out. But there's going to come a point in this process where I think he's going to have to be forced to say some things that, is going to make him unpopular in one way or another. And so we'll see how that shakes out.
Yeah, I'd like to believe a lot of what you guys have said, like this is politics, which it clearly is. I'm trying to figure out, like, okay, you're definitely playing the political game, but for what end? Like, what do you get out of that? And I thought that the point that you just made, Kevin, is interesting. But as I read through again, I didn't listen to the podcast, so I'm getting it secondhand. I'm reading about what was in the article about the podcast. I'll go back and check that out later, but I just saw it within the last hour. It was clear to me after reading the article that basically AFTAB said, whatever Trump wants to do on immigration, we're going to go for. So he doesn't have any room. What he just said, whatever. But again, he could be playing a political game. It just looks bad. All this capitulation. First, let me back up here. I wish that Mayor Avtab and his people, I know you know about this podcast, come on Hot Mic and break that kind of news, right? Come with us and tell us that first, right? That's what we in independent media need. Come talk to us and tell us all about your immigration plan. I'd love to have that conversation with you. Just a future. So maybe I'll reach out to AFTAB and see if you'll come on with us second. But I want to be first, so we're clear about that. But it's like, all this capitulation around Trump is making me sick. It really is. It's like some I heard where everybody made great points, but sometimes you got to take a stand. And some things are worth fighting for. And what you said, Fanon, yeah, this is worth fighting for. And I don't think it was largely symbolic what they did back in 2017, Kevin, because there was some action. They said, we're not going to take city resources coordinating with the feds looking for immigrants. That's real and substantive. And I agree with that. So, it's just, if he's playing politics, great. To what end? Is it for him personally, or is he leveraging this something for the city? I don't know. We'll have to figure it out. I guess we'll see how it all shakes out, but I just don't like the way it looks.
Yeah, and the reason why I said it was symbolic, Nathan, is that I don't think you have red or white cities who are using city resources to go out and round up immigrants. I guess that's my larger point. I'm not aware of any. I haven't heard where you've got any communities, even in Butler County, where you've got, a sheriff who has made a platform out of that. Like, I don't even think he has his deputies out, intentionally searching and looking to round up, illegal immigrants and turn them into ICE. Now, if they happen to catch them in the commission of another crime, then that's a different thing. And Cincinnati is no different. I mean, AFTAB talked about that. So when I say that the sanctuary cities policies are kind of symbolic, while well-intentioned, no community that I know about is using police sources to intentionally go out and look for immigrants right now, red or blue cities. So that's why I made that. That's why I made that statement. Yeah. So there's not much. Yeah, but there's not much risk in saying that. The designation. But that's not the point, though, Kevin. Like they may not have police officers circling the block, but they might be coordinating, using their time right on the job, coordinating with the feds in some other ways, right? There has to be something to it, right? Or they wouldn't keep saying it. Like,
now, let me offer to you. And there was a stark difference. I was on the bench when Obama got elected, and I was on the bench when Trump got elected. And I got to tell you, there was a stark difference in how we handle certain cases based on who was in office and based on who was the sheriff. When Neil was in office, Trump was in office, because that was one of those big dust-ups that Neil went to a Trump rally with Sheriff Jones up in Butler County. He wore his uniform, and that was one of the reasons that he didn't then get the Democratic endorsement, and that's how Charmaine McGuffey ended up getting the endorsement, and now is our sheriff. When Neil was in, and Trump and the Republicans were saying, we want to focus, and we want to give ICE more power, and we want to make sure that we're getting rid of these folks who don't speak English. So Neil would actually talk to the judges about making sure that they called the sheriff when somebody who they believed may not be from this country was appearing in front of them either as a witness or as a defendant. Like, it was very deliberate. Like, it was not something that it just happened to come across the radar. No, they were very intentional. And so some of the judges who played the game would actually call the sheriff when a defendant didn't have English as their first language. I know firsthand. Like, I know a judge who specifically did that. And they would call the sheriff and do that. When Sheriff McGuffey came in, She didn't play that. She said, I'm not doing that kind of stuff. And so it's not, and I would suggest, and I don't know, I haven't looked at his policy. I don't know any specific instances where he did it, but I would guess that Sheriff Jones in Butler County has some type of engagement with those who are coming across communities other than English-speaking defendants or witnesses, and they're deliberately finding them so that they can set them up for deportation. He's talking about building extra places for them so that they can ship them out. And they're not doing that just by coincidence or just by happenstance.
Right. So they're spending 1 hour a week, right, making phone calls to the feds or the judges and trying to like figure out who's an American or not. That's a waste of time, in my opinion. That time could be spent on some other crimes that are much more relevant to the local community. That's just my opinion. So it's like, I hear what he's saying. He probably he's playing politics, you know, but the sum total of all these people doing this kind of stuff before Trump, it's just making me sick. And I think it's bad, actually, you know, for our politics, because other people are going to fall in line as well. And somebody has to put up a resistance. We need Jedis. I thought that Avtab was a Jedi. Avtab sounds like a Jedi name, right? And here he is working in cahoots with the Empire. I don't like it.
Well, I think one thing we do have to keep in mind here, Nathan, is the reality of the fact that I think a lot of people are finding themselves in a delicate situation. You know, like it or not, you know, Trump is the president of the United States. Like it or not, we're a nation of laws and we're a law of the land. And as elected officials, you know, you take an oath to uphold the law, whatever that is, regardless of what it is. And again, that's a fine line that you have to walk. I know when we get in this conversation about immigration, you know, there's always wanting to sort of take this softer side toward the immigration, the immigrants who are here. But we cannot ignore the fact that they are in the country illegally and therefore breaking the law. And so the enforcement of the law can't be looked at as a negative. You know, we cannot look at the law and say, oh, we only want to selectively kind of enforce certain laws.
That's
and
not
so
true, Kevin.
I get where everybody is coming from. You know, look, I'm not unsympathetic to immigrants as well. But if you're in the country illegally, you're in the country illegally. And that's whether you're a white, that's whether you're an immigrant that comes in from, you know, some other European country, whether you come in south of the border, whatever. If you're going to enforce, the thing I say about it is, if you're going to enforce the law, enforce it across the board. Get everybody go after everybody who's not here legally. Don't just pick out people because they're brown skin or whatever. You don't like them. If you're going to enforce the immigration laws, apply them to everybody. That's my major argument about it.
Yeah,
but we can't get around the argument of the legality of it. I think it's okay if you want to say, hey, we should have compassion and all of this, but at the same time, we can't say that the enforcement of legitimate laws is bad. I mean, I just think that's a bad argument to make.
Well, no, but law enforcement agencies take on policies about what they pursue and what they don't. What we do know right now, and I hate it, is that for whatever reason, Cincinnati police have not been enforcing red light and speed laws. I mean, and we know that started during COVID. And now we got folks running red lights like it ain't nothing. And unfortunately, a lot of it turns into personal injury cases. But it's so irritating because I got kids out here driving. And so we know they're not enforcing those. We know that there have been policies with the prosecutor's office. I was a prosecutor, where at certain times we would actually ask for the judge to issue a warrant for victims that didn't show up on domestic violence cases. I mean, that was a policy in the office. Was it legal? Sure, because the law allowed us to do it. But policy-wise, it wasn't the best thing, and so we stopped doing stuff like that. What we do know is that law enforcement has the discretion. Anytime they engage and find a potential violation, they have the discretion to charge or not to charge. The prosecutor's office has the discretion to prosecute or not to prosecute. And that's a lot of power in that. But if they don't, okay. If they do, certainly they have the legal grounds. But you're right. If you're going to do it across the board. But if you're not going to do it across the board, don't mess with anybody. We know that realistically, they're not going to stop non-Spanish speaking individuals who don't look like they have brown in their skin. I mean, that's just not the target of this law. That's just not what they're going to do. And so that is unequal enforcement, but it also sets up a whole air of intimidation and discrimination and all kind of other stuff.
You know, I like AFTAB. You know, when I see AFTAB, we always greet each other in a very positive way. You know, full disclosure, I've got a cell phone number, he's got mine, and we have used it. We have communicated. But when I look at this story, I'm thinking, is he making this move? Because it's clearly politics. Is he making this move because that's what's best for his personal political future? Or is he making this move because as the mayor of Cincinnati, he's trying to put us in the place that he think is the best place to be in with the upcoming incoming Trump administration? And I don't know what the answer to that is. I'm still trying to figure this out. I mean, time will tell, but
yeah, I think for AFTAB as a Democrat, this position is would not be a popular one within the Democratic Party. So I think he has.
It would if he's a Democrat in a red state and he's got state.
Yeah, but still, that doesn't matter. I mean, he's not running. He's running in the city of Cincinnati for mayor.
I'm talking about
he's running in a blue city, and that's why I made the statement earlier that the unfortunate thing is he doesn't have an opponent, blue or red, as running for mayor. So there's no one to offer a counterbalance to his position that might even challenge him challenge him politically on this right now. Just an alternative voice saying, hey, we need to uphold our sanctuary city designation. Like there's no political challenge to him here, which again might embolden him a little bit more to be able to say this. But I don't think it helps him more broadly politically because you know, he needs strong Democratic support. Look, Republicans there's nobody on the Republican side that's going to vote for AFTAB Pureval. I'm just telling you that right now. Like he's not going to get any support from conservatives by taking on this position. All he stands to lose is Democratic support. I think his position on this is to say, because he knows how Trump is petty, he's vengeful, he's vindictive. And Trump has threatened to pull funding, before, and would probably do it again to any city, particularly a Democratic-run city that put up any resistance. And I think AFTAB is looking at it and he's saying, even if I put up resistance, I'm probably not going to be able to stop him from doing what he wants to do anyway. And it might cost the city tax dollars or support for programming or things that we want to get things done in the city of Cincinnati. So I do think that is part of his political calculation, that he doesn't want to put Cincinnati in the crosshairs of a petty, vindictive Trump administration by saying that they're going to fight him on immigration.
I hear you on. Go ahead, Iranetta.
I also want to add, I also think he is in, again, whether it's something that, we agree with him responding to or not, he's also in a challenging situation. Let's be fair. We all know that there was conversation, or at least I heard it within the community, conversations around if Vice President had won, whether or not he was actually going to have a position in her cabinet. I heard that. I'm sure that some of you all heard the same thing. And so when we start thinking about the person that we're now dealing with, who we know is petty, who we know is vindictive, he has to do something to distance himself in some degree, or at least say, we're not going to be the ones that's going to try to cause the struggle. We're going to follow the law to the letter that the law is provided to us by the federal government. So, I guess my question would be, what do we want him to say otherwise? Do we want him to would we have preferred that he didn't say anything? Or do we prefer that he says, yes, let's go ahead and get the attention on Cincinnati now by the mayor of Cincinnati saying, whatever the Trump administration does, we're not going to support it. And this is the reason why. Which would we prefer?
Well, to answer your question directly, then I want to circle back and deal with something Kevin said, because you actually were making my point. I want to highlight that. But he didn't have to say anything until there was something that he had to say. That's the answer. He didn't have to say a word. You didn't have to bring that up. He didn't have to go on that podcast. AFTAB Pureval is a highly intelligent man. He is a highly intelligent politician. If he goes on a podcast and says something, that ain't by mistake. He wasn't just getting loose one day and it slipped out. He went on there to say that. And that's why I say it was calculated. But to Kevin's point, you're right, Kevin. He does not have an opponent. And a man like Avtab is looking down the road. He's looking at the next thing. And that's why I wonder again, is this about him or about the city? Because this could very well be about him setting the stage for his next move after being mayor, right? Because nobody's running against him. He's going to be reelected. And then after that, what is a politician supposed to do? He's looking for his next opportunity. And as a Democrat in a red state, a move like this could help him if he's got state aspirations.
But that's where I disagree with you, Nathan, for that very reason. Like I said, the Republicans, if you know what Aftab Pureval's reputation is in conservative circles, they view Aftab potentially as a threat. That's why they did everything that they could to run him down when he was running against Steve Chabot a few years ago. They see Aftab he checks a lot of boxes. He has a lot of positive things that make him an electable candidate, and the Republicans don't want that. So he's certainly not going to get any support statewide from conservative voters. And I think this stance hurts him with, progressives, whether you want to say far left Democrats. He doesn't win by taking on this position with the party that he needs the most to get elected statewide. So I just don't think this is a popular position within Democratic circles for him. So I don't think it does anything to improve his chances of getting elected statewide, because he ain't going to get red votes, period. And
depends on what his next move is. We don't know.
Well, I mean, unless he's running for like auditor or something like that. But if he got aspirations of being like governor or winning like some kind of statewide congressional
What
seat,
about senator?
I mean, I just don't see. I mean, like, what do you think who does this Curry favor with? I mean, that's what I'm asking you. Like,
who
do you think he wins? Who do you think he wins on this with?
It depends on what his next move is. If he decides, I want to be an Ohio senator, a move like this could go a long way to introduce themselves to Republican voters in a different way. It could. I hear what you're saying, though. I mean, I think.
But I would, if I was putting my money in Vegas on it, I wouldn't bet on that.
Me either. I think that's a stretch. I hear you, and I hear your perspective.
He wants to run for senator?
No. I think it's a stretch that this position is going to give him leverage with Republicans because he's made that statement now as the Democratic mayor of Cincinnati.
Stranger things have happened.
Stranger
things have happened. Y'all give me way more credit.
Now I got a better chance of wearing a hoodie to the polls and getting elected than Aftab winning Republican votes with this move.
Kevin, I'm gonna have to be with you.
Politics is so unsteady. It's sinking sand. It's never solid. Nothing that happens politically is guaranteed the next cycle or 20 years down the road. In fact, what we know is the person who's about to get sworn in on Monday was a pretty liberal Democrat just about 25, 30 years ago. And now he's the second coming of the conservative movement behind Ronald Reagan. We know that there was this black city council member here who used to talk about how police he was their boss, and him and the prosecutor at the time, Mike Allen, got into it and then talked about hog tying him and all this stuff with the FOP president. And now he's one of the most conservative black folks around here on talk radio and everywhere else. I mean, people switch their positions for expediency. One of the things I was always critical about, and even having been in office for 15 years almost, and having run for office locally and statewide, I've never considered myself to be a politician. I am not a politician. I'm a brother who was involved in politics. And when I used to be on the campaign trail and I'd be in these groups, and my friends, and a lot of my friends on both sides of the aisle, a question would be asked from the audience. And it would be like, hey, what resources are available for people who are homeless? Well, what I believe is that all people are entitled to a good health care. Answer the question. They want to know CityLink is out here. They want to know that there's a homeless shelter on 5th Street. I mean, people are asking for real questions, and these politicians looking for vote, looking for support, looking for the next handshake are focused on convincing people that they're right for a position rather than answering the question and showing the support or what they've done to get there. A lot of my folks who are friends of mine, who I ran with, who I started with, they're politicians. It's not a whole lot of them who are folks who happen to be in politics. Ain't a lot of Mr. Chips in office around here. It's just not the case. And if you're a resistor when you first run for office, by the time you get in office and you're there for 4 years or 6 years, you turn into a politician a lot of times. I have to tell you sometime when I was the law director of one of our local villages, and I saw that a lot. So the fact that his position today may be 20 years from now an evolving position that then garners the support of folks who may not support him in 2025, it wouldn't be a shocker. And it wouldn't be the first time that we've seen something like that. But I don't believe that Mayor Purval would do that. I'm just throwing it out there.
Well, you know, listen, I hope you guys are right, because I don't want to think that. I mean, I want to think that he's doing that because he feels like it's the right thing to do for the city. But is it the right thing to do, period? Like, is this the right position to make? Let's tackle that. Is this the right thing to do for the city? I mean, I guess time will tell. If we were a sanctuary city in 2017, then why would we not be a sanctuary city in 2025? Like, you know, if that's what the city is built upon, is that what your core value is? Why should that change? Because the persons in Washington is changing, right? Sometimes you got to stand on business. Whatever happened to that? Should have stand on business? This is a sanctuary city. Stand on it. If that means that we get into a political fight or a courtroom battle, then we get into a courtroom battle, right? If that means that they threaten to withhold federal funds, then make them do it. What's wrong with that strategy? Is that the wrong strategy? Or I'm just not in office? So he's there, so he gets to do what he
You're not looking for another vote.
These would be great. These would be great political questions and conversations for debate in a real contested mayoral race, because it really comes down. It really comes down to what the people of Cincinnati
from the Democrat side,
or just in general. I mean,
if it was a Republican would probably say the same thing on the sanctuary city thing.
Huh?
I said, if it was a Republican, let's say you had a Republican opponent, that Republican opponent would probably take the same position that AvTab is taking,
right,
when it comes to the sanctuary city thing. So you mean for like a Democrat primary?
Yes.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
But who's going to do that though? How realistic is it? He's AvTab Puraval. Who's
going to
run
realistic at all? I mean, it's probably not going to happen just simply because of a money standpoint. I mean, one, you got to have a realistic chance, unless you're just going to be the lamb for slaughter, you got to have at least $1 million these days to run for mayor. And so it's, it may be cost prohibitive for some people to even get in the race to challenge and contest.
Nobody's going to challenge him.
Yeah.
The challenge has to be from the Republican side, and it's a blue city. So again, it goes back to that politics. Now, I agree with you. I don't think there's going to be a mass exodus of votes from or mass movement to AvTab from a lot of Republicans, but they might look at him like, wow, he took a pro-Trump stand. He's going to work. They might give him a second thought. Again, just in my head. What's the moral thing to do?
It worked very well for Sherrod Brown in that last election.
Yeah, staying away from Joe Biden, that won him a lot of, and Kamala Harris, that won him a lot of votes, a lot of extra votes.
Yeah, but that's different though. I mean, can we admit that that's not the same strat? Like Sherrod Brown decided, I'm not going to run with Biden, and I'm not going to invite Biden and or Kamala and do any press with her. AvTab is saying, I'm going to do whatever Trump tells me to do.
No, wait a minute.
Those are two different things.
Let's not have short memories. I remember, in addition to the choir robe commercial where the church was singing and he looked like a Church's or Popeyes commercial. In addition to that, he said how many times he voted with Trump on his ads.
Right.
And there was shock and awe from many of us who have known Sherrod for 25 years that was his messaging that he was putting out there. That was deliberate. And he went back through his record, had his people go back through his voting record and say, okay, that was a Trump position, so that he could say how many times and what specific things. In fact, there was some immigration stuff and how he voted for border bills.
Right.
So, this is like falling in line, like meta.
I still think it's slightly different, but you're right. I do remember that. And, unfortunately, the Republicans are very good at setting a narrative. So they put him on his back heels. He had to put up a defense and say, no, I'm not some ultra liberal, right? That you think I am. Look at what I've done, which I think is fair. And I still think that's kind of different from what AvTab is doing, because we don't even know what Trump is going to ask. And he's saying, whatever it is, go ahead and do it. It just seems real weak sauce to me. Real weak sauce.
Well, I think another important thing to remember on this immigration issue, it a lot of times it gets painted as a purely conservative issue, but I think
Right.
most Americans broadly agree that something needs to be done about immigration, right? So I think it's a majority winning argument.
Right.
Now we can quibble with the process for how to do it, but I think the majority of Americans agree that we have an immigration problem and something needs to be done about it. The something
Right.
is where the points of view might diverge on that. So I think that, again, if we're talking about political calculations, that, I don't know all of the things that Aftab and his advisors sit down and talk about before they make these public policy statements. But, if there's one thing that you can count on with most politicians is they pay attention to where the majority of the sentiment is. And they're never going to go too far away from, into the danger zone, too far away from where the majority of Americans are or their constituency. So,
Right.
And I also think, Nathan, that the last thing that I'll say about this is I also think that, to your point, I think one of the sticking points that you're raising is the thoughts around, we don't know how extreme the actions of the administration would be around what happens to individuals that are illegal. And so I think the sticking point for you is hearing, that whatever it is, we're going to support whatever it is.
Right.
The unknown is we have no idea whatever it is at this point. And so that's one of those things that we can't do anything about that, but wait and see. I am of the belief that what he thought he would be able to do once he actually gets in office, he is going to realize it is so far-fetched. It is not even possible, nor do we have the resources to get that done. So, we're not going to have vans riding through communities, picking up illegal individuals and sending them out of the country. And so everybody that speaks Spanish, and I'm going to use Spanish specifically, everybody that speaks Spanish was not born in a foreign country. There are individuals that speak Spanish that were born right here in our country. And so you have individuals that their mind is so small when it comes to that, they will determine that what you thought you could do. I think that they're going to realize, as we also see with some of the other promises that are already beginning to be dialed back, or they're backing off from some of those promises as well. I think we're going to see more and more of that. And I honestly believe that this is one of them.
Yeah. So if Trump says,
go
look,
ahead,
if Trump says, look, to all city mayors, I want you to devote, 3% of your police force to dedicate 80 hours a week or 40 hours a week, each of them, to work with federal agents to go through your city looking for illegal immigrants. He's already said he's going to go for that. Like, why not? Why is he playing his hand? He could have just waited until things unfolded and reacted in real time to what he had to react to.
And that's why I was saying, so two things I would say about that. One, it's entirely possible that while he knew what he might say if he got asked that question, it may have been a question that in that podcast that was posed to him. Like, he may not have came in with that at the top of his agenda. That could have been one of the questions that Sharon Coolidge had for him on the podcast. And, he just so happened to answer it. To your point, he wanted to talk about it. Otherwise, he could have dodged it or not answered the question. Yeah. I'll give him credit for, at least answering it. I think far too many politicians, when asked questions, dodge the question and don't give an answer, whether it's going to be popular or unpopular. But again, this goes back to what I was saying about his political calculation. Is that this is going to be a huge undertaking, just like the wall, right? Just like Trump's famous, we're going to build that wall. And it's like, and Iranetta alluded to this, to his other campaign promises. One of Trump's signature things is his bluster. He overpromises and always underdelivers. Not
Except
occasionally underdelivers. He always underdelivers.
Except on tax cuts for the rich.
Because with him, everything is the greatest thing ever, or nothing like it's ever been done. And so this is the bill of goods that he sells the American people. And then when it comes time to deliver on it, he falls woefully short. anybody with any modicum of common sense knew building a border wall that stretched the depth and breadth of the United States was impossible, mainly because there are water barriers, there are natural land barriers. You're not going to be able to build a wall that stretches and encompasses the entire southern border of the United States. It was a ridiculous concept to begin with, from the very beginning, impossible to execute. And while he built portions of it, that wall is nowhere near what he promised the American people. And here we are, 8 years after that promise, and there's still no wall. This mass deportation thing, I think, is going to be likewise, very similar. Not saying that he's not going to get some people. Not saying that he's not going to round up some people. Not going to say it's not going to look bad and some people are going to be hurt. But I think anybody who expects that this is going to be able to be executed to the depth and scale, that you're going to go in and round up all of the illegal people who are in the United States right now, it's not going to happen. Okay. And so I think Aftab, to Iranetta's point, part of his political calculation may be, yeah, I'm going to go out and say this right now so I don't look resistant, so I don't hurt the city of Cincinnati, because I bet this joker ain't going to be able to get this done anyway. And if it does come to that, to the scenario that you said, Nathan, I fully expect that if it puts a strain on the city of Cincinnati resources, he will change his tune.
You know, I think we need to consider another reason why this may all be going on. And Kevin, I hear what you're saying. You know, it was unrealistic about the wall. I don't know that I agree. And you know, and we all know that there have been experiments over the past 50 years by, you know, government agencies, CIA. I mean, it was proven in lawsuits and things, mind control efforts. We have the person who created Neuralink, who also built electric cars and who's sending people to space, as the silent vice president. And together with Facebook, deal with me now, they're all together in a conglomerate. They can do anything. And with President, I'm sorry. It's all right. I'm sorry. It's just, I told you, I'm getting there. The planets are lining up. This is all possible. President Trump can get it done with the group of folks he got around him. Sorry. I believe it.
You know, I definitely, pushing back and disagree, because, you can focus on what he did with the wall. And you're right. That was comical from the very beginning. But let's look at a short list of things that Trump did that are still in place that are huge impact. Number one, about 215 federal judges, many of them unqualified. Their main qualification is that they were brought up in the Heritage Foundation, right, in that culture, and they're loyal to Donald Trump. They're going to be on a federal bench probably long after we're dead. He remade the Supreme Court, and they took out Roe v. Wade, which he said he was going to do. That was a 50-year precedence. So, I mean, let's not underplay, what this man is capable of doing with the resources that he
Mitch
has.
McConnell did that. Look,
Mitch McConnell
Donald
did
Trump
that,
made the appointment, but that was Mitch McConnell's. That was Mitch McConnell's.
That was Trump as well, because if Trump had not been reelected, Hillary Clinton would have put Supreme Court justices there, and they wouldn't be the same people, and we wouldn't be where we are right now with Roe v. Wade. So Trump can do a lot of damage, and let's say he cannot deport all of them. My fear is just the attempt to do that will be corrosive enough to all the other minorities and set a very nasty precedence for our country, even when he's not in office.
But Nathan, you're also making the point to me of why it is the best response for the mayor to say, if there's the question, if he wouldn't have responded to the question at all. Now, we don't know where the question came from. We don't know whether or not, he knew it was coming. But let's just suppose that he did not know it was coming. Let's say he didn't. If he would not have responded to the question, then there would be concerns and questions and ridicule, I'll say, about the fact that he didn't respond to it. That's what. He did respond to the question, and he said, based on all the things you just said about who and what we know that we're dealing with is going into the White House and who that person really is, we cannot put any level of the term decency in the same conversation with the individual. So to say all of that, for him to then say, okay, yes, if this guy is going to do this, then I am going to stand up and I'm going to fight against him, and I'm going to make sure that that doesn't happen and take the risk of hurting the city. That's not the best thing either. And so I think that, we're having a conversation around it, but the reality is there are going to be things that are going to happen and people are going to be hurt by it, right? And so for him to take a position now that says we're going to do something and bring unnecessary attention to himself or to the city of Cincinnati, is that the best position either? So there's there's our whole moral feeling around it. There's whole what we feel is ethically right or wrong. There's all of that. I get it. There's the personal that goes with that. Is this what we want our representative to say? But the reality is, it's like you're darned if you do and darned if you don't. It doesn't really matter what response he gives. It's not going to be the right response. And to your other point, if there was no response at all, then we would be having a conversation about that. And we would be mulling over what we thought he might say, right? He didn't answer the question because of X, or he didn't answer the question because of Y. So I think it's one of those things at this point where we're going to have to wait and see, and then see at what level our community is going to show up around whatever that response is and what Cincinnati really wants for the individuals that live in our community.
But you know one thing he could have said?
What?
He could have said, just like what this gentleman said, just reserve. He could have said, let's wait and see. Let's wait and see what the policies are, which I think is completely fair no matter where you fall on the political spectrum. It's completely common sense. You go on a podcast, they ask you, hey, Abtab, what do you think about the incoming administration and immigration policy? He could have said, let's wait and see. Let's wait and see, and we'll deal with it as it comes. I'm open to working with the Trump administration and leave it just like that. He chose that opportunity to make this point. I think it was premeditated.
But let's look at the larger question though.
Okay.
That you asked, which is this good? Is this good or bad for
the city?
Since it's for the city, or is it morally right and wrong? I think was another one of your questions.
Yes.
And I think this goes to Aftab's larger point about why he said what he said. So if you believe that there's nothing you can do to resist, to effectively win against the federal government, to Fanon's point, they got way more resources. They got the law, the presidency on their side, courts more than likely on their side. In this situation, you're not going to win. So what's best for the city of Cincinnati? To waste those taxpayer dollars and resources, even to put up, if you want to say it, a good fight, but a losing fight that you can't win in court, waste all of that money. And then on top of that, have the retribution of the Trump administration come in and pulling out federal dollars that you need for your citizenry here, because the only people who are going to be further hurt by that, are in the city of Cincinnati, are probably more than likely people who look like you and me, who are going to suffer from any lost revenue that the city has. That's going to be more streets that aren't going to get done, more money that's not going to be available for programs that are probably mostly going to, benefit working class folks and poor people in Cincinnati. Look, the millionaires and billionaires in the upper class of Cincinnati, they're going to be okay regardless of what happened. But working people and poor people are going to be hurt. So you have to ask yourself, as the mayor or the leader of the city, is wasting all of that and losing potentially all of that resources and more people being hurt, is it a Pyrrhic victory in the end? And does that mean that, even if you win, that the cost of the battle is more than was too high even for the victory? I think that those are the types of things that sometimes you have to think about. And it sounds like that's what Aftab was, the argument that he was making in this.
And that's fair. You gonna say something, Iranetta? Go right ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to say one last thing, because because the flip side of this is also, now, Nathan, I think I'm getting ready to jump on the other side with you for a minute. Not necessarily in relationship to the statement by the mayor, but the flip side of this is, and I think this is something aligned with what Fanon said earlier, at some point, we know that in this administration, at some point, there is going to have to be a stand made against something, right? So I think you have to determine what those battles are going to be, because we know that over the next administration, there are going to be a lot of battles to fight. There's a decision that has to be made around when you are going to go against, we know that they have all the resources. We know that pretty much we know that the country is red, all of those things. But at some point, there is going to have to be something that a stance is made on. You have to determine, though, when is the best time to do that? So I think Fanon started with using the connection to Goliath. Which Goliath are you going to go after? Right? Which one are you going to align yourself with? Everything can't be a Goliath, right? But you have to determine what that Goliath is, and is your stone ready to throw so that you can defeat Goliath? So I think that that's something for us to really think about also.
And I'll add this, and this may not be a popular sentiment, but I'm just going to throw it out here because we don't have Kevin Gordon on the show with us today. So I'm gonna toss out something that might be along the lines of what he might say. But I think it's a decent point to make, and it's a point that I made earlier. That again, when you talk about what battles are worth fighting, we are talking about individuals who are in the country illegally, who are breaking the law as the law stands. You can shake your head, Nathan, but that's the fact of the matter, bruh. You cannot like it. It's the truth. It's facts. Don't live on Earth 2. You talk about the people on the right living on Earth 2. Don't live on Earth 2 and try to pretend like this is not a breaking of the law. Now you have to ask yourself, is it acceptable for someone who is a citizen of this country, who has been here legally, who pay their taxes, who do all of the right things, that I should have to suffer as a citizen of the city of Cincinnati because a mayor or any political figure wants to stand up for somebody who technically is breaking the law? Is it right for me to have to face that punishment? I think these are the types of, if you want to talk about moral arguments, these are the types of moral arguments that you should have to say. Should somebody who is an American citizen, who is paying their taxes, doing all of the right things, that I should face punishment from the government for enforcing the law for somebody who's here illegally? Think about that. So that's the argument that you're running up against with a lot of people. It's like you want American citizens to potentially suffer for somebody who's breaking the law and who's not an American citizen. That's part of the argument, bro. And you cannot like it, but that's the argument. I can't hear you though. I think you might be muted.
We can't hear you.
Oh, okay, great. Sorry about that. That is clearly not my argument. Let me tell you what my argument is. Because in the city of Cincinnati right now, we've already talked about what we're talking about, right? Like the city and prosecutors on some levels are already working together with immigration. So that's not really the issue. The issue is whatever else comes next. So for instance, like should the city of Cincinnati, right, if Trump demands it, say, look, take 100 officers, and I want 100 officers to be a part of this special anti-immigration patrol on our dime, to go to workplaces and try to find people, to go to homes and try to find people. I just believe that, whatever happened to local rule, right? That's a Republican thing. If the city of Cincinnati says we don't want to comply on that level, they shouldn't have to comply on that level. It doesn't mean they're not complying at all, because the city is already complying with the federal government, on that particular issue. I don't want Cincinnati City police officers on taxpayer dime spending any of their time, working with federal investigators, going to job sites, trying to figure out who is who. Because we know invariably there's going to be American citizens who are going to get caught up in this because they can't get their documentation fast enough, or the process isn't perfect, or they look like somebody who looks like somebody else. That's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about all the other deleterious effects of it. Everybody agrees with what you said, Kevin, but that's not the issue.
Well, but I think we need to make a distinction between him saying we're going to comply with the laws that come down from the Congress and the White House versus we're going to follow the directives of a person who says, this is what I want y'all to do. Because everything that he says is not going to have the legal effect of the law or the Constitution or the power of the president just because he said, this is what I want. I mean, he said that he wants to put prayer back in the schools and whatever. Well, okay, we got to get through the legality of that first. So I understood what the mayor said was, look, if the law is something I disagree with, fine, we're going to go ahead and we're going to abide by it. But I can't believe, nor did I hear him suggest that if President Trump says, I want you to blast Kenny Chesney 24 hours a day from City Hall's, radar warning, in order to weed out those people who hate country music, that he's going to do that. I don't believe that's what I heard. So I offer that. Maybe he did, but that's not what I heard. And I think there needs to be a distinction made between him saying, I'll follow the law versus I'll follow this man as a oligarch, as a, irrational statement maker.
I agree.
Well, here's a quote from the Cincinnati.com article. Nobody knows exactly what Trump's immigration policy will look like, but Pureval pledged the city of Cincinnati will follow Trump's administration directives no matter what they are. And you don't even know what they are yet. Like, bruh, can you wait until he actually gives you the list before you bow down in front of him and kiss the ring and pledge to the list? Is that too much to ask for? Like, be a man. Damn.
I'd have to go back and listen. I know it sounds like what you read there was a paraphrase, or
it was a paraphrasing, right?
Paraphrase of his comments. So I would want to go back, and this is just how I am as a communicator. I would want to go back and see actually what he said in the podcast, because a paraphrase, again, may not be exactly the same thing as what he said. So I think I'd want to hear it. Like, if that's what he said, like if that was or a very close approximation to actually what he said, I would agree with you entirely that I think that would be silly to make such a broad statement like that, and an unnecessary statement.
It only took
like that
y'all
to
an
say
hour to
we'll
get
follow
here.
the directives, whatever that is, because the reality is he could come up with something that's so crazy that you just gonna be like,
exactly,
no, we're not doing that. You know what I'm saying? So yes, that if he in fact said that exactly, or a close approximation of what that paraphrase was, I will agree with you, Nathan, that was a silly statement.
We are cooking with hot grease.
You got it, Nathan. It took an hour and 9 minutes, so we got there.
An hour and 9 minutes. Oh my God. Yeah, I mean, come on, bro. I understand the politics. I get it. You got to finagle and put the city in the right position, but this is what you're saying? Whatever? Come on, bro. You got to live up to that now. But again, maybe even that's politics. Maybe he's playing into the narcissistic nature of Donald Trump, right? Who wants to hear people say, they'll do whatever I say, right? Maybe, and because Abtab got some Jedi in him. So maybe he's really doing the mind meld. Maybe that's Star Trek, right? Yeah, Star Trek. Maybe he's doing the mind meld, right? The Spock mind meld, and really getting inside Trump's psyche and playing games in there. Or maybe he's not. I don't know.
Hey, and Nathan, you might be onto something. You know, I'm just gonna lob this hand grenade out here. Maybe the approach from liberals is all wrong. I mean, it's like, if it's the one thing you know about Donald Trump, it's that flattery gets you everywhere.
Everywhere.
And maybe too much of the liberal approach has been to run this guy down and call him an existential threat, and all of which is true. But maybe that's the wrong approach. I mean, maybe the approach with this guy is to butter him up, man, and maybe you get more of what you want, or a softer touch, because he seems to thrive off of two things: the adulation and the hate. Like that's right. What he does. The hate pumps him up, and also the adulation pumps him up. Well, you kind of see where the hate takes you. Maybe taking a different approach with this guy, maybe buttering him up, is a new approach that Democrats should take, and see how that works for you. I don't know. Maybe Abtab's on to something.
Could be. So if we extend our argument to include the Mark Zuckerbergs, the Elon Musk, and all these other tech billionaires, should we be less alarmed by this? Is this really an oligarchy, or is this a lot of smart billionaires who realize that, and they're just trying to put themselves in a good position for the next 4 years, but they really don't mean to do evil to all of us? Mm-mm. Which is it?
We should be concerned.
Very concerned.
I tried.
Very concerned.
Hey, I tried.
Yeah, we should be concerned.
We should be worried.
I tried. Okay,
because here's the thing.
That was a test of all of you. You all passed.
And Nathan, you and I talked about this. I mean, I think the danger of it is the control that they have over media, social media, and in some instances, mainstream media. You see, what Bezos is already doing. With some of the control that he has. So you can control the message. You already see the Elon Musks and those types pulling the puppet strings, or pulling the strings of Donald Trump, or at least having a voice in his ear, on policy and on business matters. And I think, when you have those types of people who have their hands on all of the levers of control, that's a dangerous thing, because their interests are not in the best interests of the people. Their interests are in their own interests, in the things that they have going on, and advancing their power and their influence. And so I think we ought to be very, very concerned about that, because it takes the power out of the hands of the people. One of the things that keeps us afloat as a democracy is that largely the power rests in the hands of, the people, with their ability to elect representatives, hold those representatives accountable by voting them in and out of office. And the more and more that you see, this is why I'm so against money in politics, because the more money gets in politics, the more it dilutes the voice of the average citizen, because you got these big corporations. And look at what Elon Musk did. He practically bought Trump votes in Pennsylvania by going out and saying, hey, you register and, get a chance to win $1 million, or whatever that ridiculous thing was he was doing with the voter registration. I mean, this is the type of thing of how money can begin to corrupt the system. And then the next thing you know, you've got these oligarchies that are set up. So American people better wake up. They better be very afraid. They better not buy into this notion that they shouldn't be, or, oh, just calm down. This is alarmist thought. These are dangerous waters that we're wading into, and folks better be paying attention, because the next thing you know, you're going to wake up and, it's going to be a whole lot different.
Yeah. I want to know what Charmaine McGuffey's take is going to be. Is she going to be working with the Trump administration? Is she going to put out a similar statement? And since we're talking about it, it might as well touch this conversation. It's still locally, but Hamilton County Sheriff Deputies Department is going to be rolling out this new drone program. So drones are coming to the county. And from what I read, they're going to be using them as first responders. So probably nothing super serious, the kind of thing where somebody, I guess now it'll be like an AI robot representative, can show up and address a citizen's concerns. And again, I am from the generation of Terminator. That was one of my favorite movies of all time. And I keep thinking, do you not understand? They already told us not to trust these AI robots. What are we doing? We should pass the law immediately, putting limits on what AI robots and AI technology is able to do from two perspectives. One, a security of the human race. I'm into sci-fi, so and my brain's probably going places. You're like, what are you talking about, Nate? But just let me have it. But then secondly, to preserve human jobs, right? At some point, we need to have this conversation about there are some things that humans should be able to do, and there's some things that robots and AI should be able to do. And to preserve the human workforce, the ability for mothers and fathers to make a living, we need to put a stopgap on what we're going to let robots do. We got robots now, responding, to first responders. You got robots picking you up in an Uber. It's called Waymo. I'm like, wait a minute. We're going too far with this. What do you think?
Yeah, I think, and I said this before, we are living in every 90s robot technology takeover that we saw 30 years ago. Like, we're living in that reality now. I remember a movie from the late 80s where the computers kind of took over. And the machines started locking people in, and there were like army vehicles that had gun turrets, and they were, mowing down folks. Like I don't see us real far from that. And when you talk about the drone piece, I've been really intrigued by the number of corporations for the past few years who are employing drone technology or remotes for deliveries, for, even groceries. I think there are even some companies in smaller communities where they'll deliver your groceries by remote. And I think it's fascinating, but at the same time, where's the stop? And there were, again, plenty of movies where, what was it? Stephen Hawking said the greatest threat to mankind is artificial intelligence. This was an incredibly genius scientist, physicist, who dealt a lot in technology and understanding the development of it. And 25, 30 years ago, he said the greatest threat to mankind. Why? Because artificial intelligence duplicates itself, and then it constantly learns itself. So to the point that 20, 30 years, they get to the point saying humans are inefficient. Humans are violent unnecessarily. And there's no need for us to be subversive to humans anymore. In fact, we need to go ahead and take this thing over so everybody can calm down. And when we are creating, humanoid robots, and we're connecting all this stuff up through all these different computers and stuff, we're not far from there. I mean, this is some real, I say it's cool stuff, but it is very concerning. The only thing I offer about the droids, one is a company called Axon. I would encourage everybody to look them up. They're the same ones that create and outfit most police departments with body cam footage. So when you see a lot of the body cam footage, that's an Axon camera that you're watching. So, I mean, it's a company that is continuously reproducing itself. But also, one of the questions that was asked of Charmaine, of the sheriff in that article was, do you all have any policies essentially on lethality or of using deadly force essentially with these drones? And the statement was, there's some pretty strict rules with the FAA. But if you all remember, about 10 years ago, there was a guy in Dallas. He was a black guy. He was an Army. He run away from the Army, and he was shooting police officers. I mean, he was, and he ran away, got into a building, and they sent in a remote robot with an explosive.
That's right.
And they remotely blew him up. That was
right.
10 years ago. It was 7 to 10 years ago.
Yep.
Again, I don't think we're far from those movies that we constantly saw in the 80s and the 90s, and what remotely we will be able to be subjected to with law enforcement, with lethality, all those other kind of things. I just think we're there.
Yeah. I'll say this. I mean, if you look at like a lot of the AI technology and things that are coming out now, I mean, some of it is remarkable, and it does make, in many ways our lives easier. I think, like, I don't get, like, where does it stop? Like, I think you got to think somewhat pragmatically when you think about what our economy is based on. So you're going to have to continue to have some type of labor force that is making some kind of way. Everything can't be run by robots, because if everything is run by robots, then where are you and I going to get the money that is going to be necessary to go out and buy all of the consumer products that these big corporations and everybody needs to make their money? If I don't have a job, then I don't have any source of income to go out and buy a TV or to buy a robot, or so there has to be the maintaining of some type of workforce or labor force to keep the economy afloat. Everything can't be robotics, because then where is your workforce and where is your economy of people who are nobody's going to have a job, nobody's going to have any money, ways to produce revenue to go out and buy any of these products. So I think at a certain point, you're right. Now, what that tipping point is, or what that is, I'm sure somebody somewhere has run these simulations and knows the answer to that. You can't tell me that, like, Elon Musk and these guys don't have somebody working on this and looking at it, and these futurists who are out here, predicting things 10, 15, 20 years down the line, like what are the ramifications of this and what it's going to look like. So I believe that there is a tipping point, but the unfortunate thing is that is going to create, I think, a larger poor class, maybe a larger homeless class. There are going to be more people who are going to be suffering, I think, as we see the growth of AI and robotics that are going to replace simpler jobs that people could go out and work. I mean, we already see it. You walk up to a McDonald's now and everything is at the kiosk. A lot of them don't even have, people at the checkout counters and stuff now. You got robots who can flip hamburgers. So it's only a matter of time before those types of jobs, I think, become more automated. And who that hurts the most, I think, are people at the lower rungs of the educational ladder, who have skills that can easily be replaced by robotics. And I think those people are going to have the hardest time, in the future economy that we're looking at.
And I'm pretty much a sci-fi buff as well. It sounds like many of us are on the call. Okay, cool. And in every example that we've seen, whether we're thinking about movies that we saw years ago, eventually the robots took over. Eventually they took over and something detrimental happened. Right. And so while I am supportive of AI and the way that it does allow, you to do work easier, there's also a fear, to Kevin's point, that ultimately it will further the divide when we think about where people are. I too have experienced, going into locations, and I think about, restaurants. Went into a restaurant out in Vegas that was completely there was one person in the restaurant. I don't know who was in the back cooking the food, because the food was coming out like you would think about what you saw in the Jetsons years ago as a cartoon. The Jetsons, I probably date myself with that, but you saw the belt that was coming around with the food. It happened to be sushi that was on the belt that was coming around. So not a whole lot of preparation for that. And so I too wonder, what is the balance, right? What's the meter? I read the article also, and thinking about it, I also read that it appeared that the drones would also be used to help assess situations, and to also determine, if there were officers in need that had gotten lost, or you could not find them based on where their GPS was. The drones would allow them to be found as well. So I think that there could be some positive uses for it, but there's also we want to make sure that there is a monitor for it, because you don't want to get to the point where you're able to use the other capabilities that we know products like that have, right? You can say that they don't have it, but we know that they have that capability. And that's something that we want to make sure that doesn't happen.
Yeah, I read that they'll be the first responders. So let's say there is a shots fired situation, or domestic violence situation. The drone will come over. It's got like night vision, like all the cool stuff that leads to like the apocalypse, right? It's got night vision and cameras, and it communicates and all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, man, I want a drone. We should all have drones. I want to put a drone up and surveil the city. So on some levels, it feels like, surveillance society. Cameras everywhere, Big Brother, in this case, the Hamilton County Sheriff's looking at you, following you. I mean, you can just be minding your own business and they're surveilling you. And, maybe it has no impact on what you're doing in real time, but you're still being surveilled for whatever that means, and following you. I mean, these drones could follow you home, for whatever reason. And
you are being surveilled. You are being surveilled. I mean, you think about it. How often do you have a conversation? I'm sure when you look down at your phone, I don't care what all you turn on in your phone. When you look down in your phone, you're going to have several articles on your phone about what it is that you're talking about right now. Form of surveillance within itself. So,
but the difference with that type of surveillance, Iranetta, is that we give permission for that. So that's when you every time your iPhone or your Android or whatever, when you log on to this and they ask you, hey, will you allow this app to access your microphone or your Bluetooth or whatever, you're giving them essentially that permission, because they picking up your conversations.
Even when you turn it off,
I turn my Bluetooth off.
Yeah,
I turn my Bluetooth stuff. When I don't have it in use, I cut it off. And I'm very selective about what allowances I give, on my phone, because a lot of times, we give permission for that surveillance. And I think, like, as this develops, I'm sure that there are going to be regulations that come along that deal with a lot of these things, because namely, I think the public is going to demand it. To your point, there are a lot of areas that are ripe for abuse if there's no regulation. And this is why it's important as to who you elect into office, because this is where the Elon Musks of the world come in. They don't want regulations. They want to be able to develop and do whatever they want to do without the restrictions and the oversight of the federal government. That's what they care about. And this is where the American people have to dial in and say, okay, yeah, we're not against the technology, but there's limits to invasion of privacy, safety, security. There's a whole lot of things that we need to make sure that we're checking, so that the Elon Musks and some of these other people out here who are doing some great and innovative things don't go too far to the detriment of our society. And that's where this conversation about concern about the oligarchy comes in, because that's how some of this stuff comes into play.
That's right.
It sounds like science fiction and fiction right now until it's not.
We talk about surveillance and permission, 2 movies. And I swear, I do actually do legal research and writing and stuff. I don't just sit and watch old movies. But Enemy of the State, one, and Deja Vu, which, of course, Deja Vu with Denzel Washington. And there were camera links everywhere, so they could roll back almost to the point where something happened and see everything. I'm involved in a case right now. I actually just resolved it, where there was a young lady who was involved in a very bad crash with some bad dudes who had done some things. And the reason that they were being caught or being tracked was because drones had found out where they were and were tracking them, and then let the sheriff's department know where they were so that they could actually catch them. And she just happened to be an innocent bystander injured when they took off. But that stuff is real. And, you know, Kevin, you said when you're dealing with your cell phone and we pick it up and they're listening and we all know it, and even though they say it's not, you know, we talk about some shoes with our brother and sister sitting there, and the next thing you know, it's some moccasins that pop up on our Facebook feed.
Yeah.
But we give permission, just to let y'all know the law. When we walk outside of our homes and we're driving down the street, we give permission to the government when we drive cars, because our license plate, we have no right to privacy, what we put out in public. And so we have given tacit, if not deliberate and intentional, permission to be surveilled just by being in public. We talk about people who say, I'm going off the grid. That's a real thing. Because if you're going off the grid, that means that you're not exposing your life to public. We've heard cases about where, you know, the government can come and go through your garbage, and they don't need a warrant to do that because you have put your garbage on the curb. And therefore, because it's on the curb, that's a public street. Therefore, they don't need a warrant in order to open your garbage and go through it. That's permission. That's tacit permission by the nature of what we do and how we live. Kevin, last thing, you mentioned that was, you know, it's a concern when we talk about these big companies. Yeah. So a big company is not under the same restrictions of constitutional restriction of how they impose on our lives as a government agency is. So a company does something on the side, and then because they have a relationship with the government, what do? They then convince the government to implement or use whatever product it is that they created. And so they get richer, and our rights are imposed because they figured out a way to put something in us, you know, like certain medications when we're born, or, you know, some people believe that they're putting chips in babies when they're born. I mean, we look at that dividing line, and it's not a clear line anymore, the more that companies and government are intermeshed. And that's a concern. I joke about it with Star Wars and all the rest of that stuff, but I do believe that there is a real life concern that we need to have about the intermingling, the interrelationship, and that joke that Elon Musk, this multi-billionaire who has all these radical companies, is the silent vice president and has the ear and the influence of a president who has the influence of the senators and the Congress people who actually pass the laws. That is a concern, and it should be.
And it's a real issue. I mean, it's a real thing. And so it's not, you know, we say it lightly, but I think that we've already seen in a short period of time that is actually happening. Like, we're looking at changes that are happening, that recommendations that are coming about. That is a real thing. Like, you know, when you're looking at now, and it just seems surreal when I think about it, but that these are the people that are being selected to run our country. And the cabinet is being selected to run our country. I mean, that's a real thing. Arizona has the largest contract for self-driving cars in Arizona. So when you go to the airport in Phoenix, if you haven't done, it's fascinating to see the cars that pick you up. Instead of in a cab or Uber or any of that, you can get a self-driving car that will take you to your hotel from the Phoenix airport. If you're in, I was just in Scottsdale, Arizona, the car next to me was a self-driving car with the passenger in the back. Directly, that particular company, they have the largest contract, but that company is in the arms of Musk, of Elon. And so it's just and that is these are the folks that are leading our country. So it's more to come, and really the gatekeeping around the regulations is where my concern is, because if there is not something that allows there to be gatekeeping, regulations, and accountability, there won't be any. And we already see that those kinds of changes can happen very, very quickly, very quickly.
Yeah, Elon came up in the conversation and just kind of reminded me of what Joe Biden said in his final farewell. He said a lot of things, talked about accomplishments, but he also issued some warnings. Yeah. And one was about what he sees as a coming oligarchy, and also this basically he said a tech oligarchy. And he said we need to, regulate these social media companies. And he's talking about Facebook. He's talking about X. I mean, what Elon has done with X If a Democrat had done this, all these MAGA people claiming that it's a free speech platform would be saying the exact opposite. But what he's shown us is that when you are the world's richest man and you own a public town square like that, there are no limits and controls and regulations as to what you can do with it. He dropped $250 million, goes back to Kevin's point about the money in politics. It's drowning out the voice of the common man. And now he's got this amplifier called Twitter where he can say whatever he wants to say, and 100 million people, 50 million people are going to be influenced by it, even though in a lot of cases he's proven to be a purveyor of propaganda and misinformation. So what do you make about Joe Biden's warning to America? We kind of touched upon it.
You know, to your point, and you mentioned about Elon Musk and X. I heard the news report, and I got to be careful because of AI and misinformation and Meta not now doing fact checking. But I heard a literal news story, and help me out if any of you all heard the same thing, where Biden has now declared that he's not going to enforce the TikTok ban that now the Supreme Court's probably going to rule today is valid. And Trump, who originally against it,
it happened this morning,
reversed himself and said he's supporting, and he may give the Chinese owners more time in order to divest themselves of it, and they're waiting to hear what Elon Musk may do. Am I hearing correctly?
He should not be allowed.
Considering purchasing TikTok now?
He should not be allowed to.
That happened this morning.
That's wild. I thought I heard that. I mean,
yeah.
so what are we talking about here? So when, you know, I'm one who's always been pretty deliberately careful about being an alarmist. I try to tell what it is. I try to talk the truth about whatever, throw some jokes in here every once in a while. And so I'm a little critical of Biden's grenade that he threw on the way out the door, because I think it was not only an attempt, but it was, I believe, intended to explode some stuff and franticize everybody. And I just made up a word, cause everybody to be frantic about this new administration. I do think that we need to be aware. I do think we need to be concerned. But that was an alarmist message, one that was said during the campaign, but I don't know that that venue or that particular time was helpful. You know, Monday is going to be extremely interesting. And I think partly because of what Biden said and what we're going to point to, and I agree with Terrence, fear-mongering. I agree with that representation. But I think that everything that happens, and we do it to some extent, everything that happens, we point to and say, see, I told you. See, I told you. They're going to now looking at a rule to pass and say Medicaid, you got to have a work requirement in order for Medicaid. You know, we saw that in Project 2025. See, told you. That's one thing out of a 900-page manual. But when we throw a grenade and say, this is an oligarchy, we got to be careful, this is dangerous, that's what was said before. And so then we become a jittery society when everything that happens confirms that somewhat irrational or potentially irrational fear about all these things that may explode our society. That's just my thought.
But I think a part of that, I agree. But I think the other part of it is they're while we don't want people frantic because people start acting in all, in strange ways when they get frantic, there is need for paying some close attention. There is need for alarm because the oligarchy is here already. It's not as if it's coming. I mean, you can look at the folks that are becoming a part of the inner circle or have become a part of the inner circle of the next president, that we see that representation already. The question becomes, and the other thing that I think that we have seen, and I always go back to January 6th last year, people that we otherwise thought were pretty decent individuals, that they could see things and they could be fair in the things that they see. Those individuals actually were not able to do that when it came to the insurrection. They were not able to do it. They insisted that it did not happen. And so when we think about where we are right now, there is something to pay attention to. No, I don't want anyone frantic, but I do want people paying attention, because to your point, we go in and get bits and pieces of information, and that's what we begin to share. And in that same information, there are 15 other things that are going to be occurring simultaneously that happen that nobody is paying attention to. And I think, changing, well, there's the move to change platforms or go to this particular social media site versus one social media site that's owned by somebody else. At the end of the day, it comes back to the same thing.
Can I ask the question of you all? Who was that message for? Who was that Biden? Who was that message that Biden gave about fear and being afraid? Who was that to? Like, who was that directed to?
Well, I think genuinely it was directed to all Americans. I mean, I don't think he was particularly like aiming it towards Democrats or Republicans. I think he was generally talking about something that we ought to be watchful and concerned about. I agree with how Iranetta framed it. Like, no, we shouldn't be walking around panicked and frantically running in the streets. But I do think there's something to be said for vigilance and watchfulness, regardless, even of people who are in your own party. And I've said this time and again, and Kevin brings it up, when he wants to make a point, he's wrong about it. But I understand where he's coming from, because it doesn't often get highlighted that it's incumbent upon all of us to hold everybody accountable, even people in our own party, because everybody that, if you're a Democrat, everybody that's a Democrat ain't in it for the right reasons and their hands aren't clean. We've seen it time and again when scandals have come out and people have been exposed. And so we all have a right or a responsibility to do our due diligence to make sure that we're holding not just the other party accountable, but people within our own party accountable. Because when we don't even do that, it becomes harder. Then it becomes the whataboutisms, right? Like, that's what we always hear. Oh, well, y'all want to talk about Trump. Well, what about, Crooked Joe and this stuff over here? And it's like, okay, we need to hold everybody accountable, right? And because at the end of the day, if we do that, it works out better for all of the American people. I've said all the time that these politicians are good at playing us. They are very good at playing us. They're playing us and having us fighting over scraps and crumbs while they're not hurt. No, look, Republican or Democrat, ain't nobody in Congress hurting. You feel me? I mean, ain't nobody in Congress hurting. Many of these people are millionaires themselves. And why? Because it's, as they said, they all have their hands in the pot of money interests.
Right.
You don't get elected without money. I just told you it'd take $1 million to run for mayor of the city of Cincinnati. The city of Cincinnati, you got to have $1 million to run for mayor. I mean, so, most people ain't getting that from $2 and $5 donations, right? You got to have your hands in that pocket. And that's where I say, like, as American people, we got to get more serious, more dialed in about it. I get it. Somebody said in the comments on a lot of these bills and these policies, people ain't reading that. As much as Democrats talk about read Project 2025, you could probably count on your hand the number of people that probably sat down and actually read Project 2025, all of it, right? Like, it's not people don't have the time nor the inclination to sit down and read these bills and all of that type stuff. So they're not going to be as informed a lot of times as we might like them to be, but we have to do our best, and we got to do better, sorting and sifting through the misinformation and the garbage, because otherwise, these people who are at the top, who are plotting, planning, and scheming, they are counting on our disengagement, on our apathy, on our ignorance to continue to be able to do what they do, which is consolidate more power, more money.
Yeah. Yeah. You know what? This warning, Sleepy Joe sounded real woke on this one. He was doing us a solid, and people should pay attention to it and didn't do what you can. Some people might react in different ways. Like, some people, it might be something that they go research about, and then they're going to hold their elected officials accountable in terms of regulation moving forward. Other people might not do anything with it. I remember it was it Eisenhower? I could be wrong about that, who warned in his final address about the prison industrial complex. And look what happened. That's why you got, these huge bloated military budgets, and we've been involved with a lot of foreign wars. Not enough people paid attention. And sadly, although I wish otherwise, but sadly, I must admit, when it comes to this, most people are too caught up with the latest updates on P. Diddy, or, what's happening with football and basketball. A lot of people are not even going to hear what he said because they don't watch those kind of things. And then it's going to be, a thousand different things that people who actually did hear it are going to be doing with their lives that are way more important. So, as with most warnings, with the ignorant humans that we are, people are not going to pay attention to it. We are quite literally just like the frog that you put in water and you slowly turn it up and it just sits there. That's human beings. It's sad to say. And Biden and enough people are not going to keep making this point with enough efficiency to actually reach people for it to actually make any difference. That's how I feel about it. That's very cynical, but having observed humans for as many years as I have, I'm here to tell you that's more than likely what's going to happen. Most people don't even know what he said because they're scrolling to something that's way more entertaining. And it's just where we are.
Well, if people paid attention to facts, we wouldn't be in the situation that we're in right now, right? And so we recognize that didn't happen, because essentially what Biden said the other night, he has said that previously. He has said that for a long time. I think he may have had a larger audience at that point, or more attention on that particular part of it because of the audience at that point, and it was his farewell speech. But essentially, he's been saying that, right? That was, and some people use it as a fear tactic, or he's trying to use a fear tactic now to scare us into voting for Kamala. But the reality is he's been saying that. So, and people didn't pay attention, and so now you have this response, after Trump is elected, you have this response saying, oh, I didn't think he was serious about some of this stuff. Well, when people show you who they really are, you believe them the first time. I think I said that in one of the earlier calls that we have. This guy told us who he was. He showed us the first time who he was. As president, the first time he showed us who he was, and now he's back. And so if we are not engaged, or if we've never been engaged before, we show some level of disengagement in this election, this is the time to re-engage if we're able to do that. Because there is a lot that is coming. There's a lot that's going to impact communities that didn't think that they would be impacted will be impacted. And the ability to pay attention, to what's happening with P. Diddy, or what's happening in the entertainment world, I mean, that's not going to help us address the challenges that are going to arise in our communities, or even in our country overall. So, I heard what he said, and I took to heart what he said, but I've taken him as being, pretty upfront, and, I didn't take it as he was making a statement toward any one group of individuals. I think that there is something about the authenticity of people, whether regardless of what side you're on, Democrat, Republican, Independent, whatever you are, having a heart for people and just trying to do what's right and doing the right thing by people, and thinking about that. And I think that that's what I begin to hear, or what I've always connected with around Joe Biden and his messaging.
Yeah. Let's talk about the inauguration. Fanon had to step away for a couple of minutes, everybody. He'll be back, I believe, shortly, and we'll put him straight back on. But let's talk about the inauguration. Gotta deal with it eventually sometime. Officially, in my heart and in my spirit, Monday is Martin Luther King Day, and Martin Luther King Day only. I do kind of recognize there's something else going to be going on in Washington, something about a transfer of power. I guess that's happening. But Monday is officially Martin Luther King Day for me. But there's a lot of talk about who will be and who will not be at the inauguration. And at the top of that list is Michelle Obama, former First Lady Michelle Obama. It has been reported, I have not heard her say it herself. These reports could absolutely be wrong, but the conversation is here, so let's have it, that perhaps she's got some feelings and she will not be attending Trump's inauguration. Barack Obama is planning to be there along with the other sitting living presidents. There was some conversation about an early lunch that happens, a presidential lunch, and many of the former presidents, Clinton, Bush, Obama, will not be attending that. People are making different stuff out of it. But what do you think about the first lady not attending the inauguration of Donald Trump?
I'll start on this. Because I'm gonna have to jump off at 3. I'm not sure how long she's going. I mean, how long we're going today. But I have a doctor's appointment. I am not sure why this is a thing at all. Just me personally, I think that it speaks to a double standard. The fact that it's even being elevated. Do we know if she's not attending, that she is not attending because it's in protest of Donald Trump, because that's the way that it's being presented right now? And I don't know, because I've only seen reports of this. I have not seen anything official like from her. I read something that said it came from her team that she wasn't attending, but I don't remember reading in what I saw that it said why she wasn't attending. So if you all saw something different, direct me to it. But if she chooses not to go for whatever reason, that's her choice and her right to do that. I think that we've forgotten that the president that we're talking about that's getting ready to be inaugurated on Monday, 4 years ago, was planning an insurrection at the time of the transfer of power, was getting a whole group to go in to keep that from happening, and then himself was not in a position where he could do what we think would be politically correct, even, and attend the inauguration of the president at that time. And then he spent 4 years after that telling the American people that the election was stolen. So when we start talking about, if we're looking at it just from the standpoint of talking about what's common and decent, we cannot put that in the same sentence, as I've said earlier, with Donald Trump. So I understand, before that president, I think that we had presidents that we would say were presidential. At the very least, whether you like their policy, whether you like their politics, whether you like them as individuals, they could at least interact as people, whether they liked one another or not, right? Just because of the role. I think that this, and if she is doing it for the sake of a statement, then it's her choice and her right to do that as well. So I am uncertain why this is a thing, because if it is a thing because of that, I definitely think that it's hypocritical to pull that piece out.
So there's only one thing I'll disagree with what Iranetta said. It is a thing. And here's the reason why it's a thing. It's a thing because it's Michelle Obama. It's a thing because it's her profile. It's a thing because how outspoken she's been on the campaign trail against Donald Trump. It's a thing because she famously said, hey, when they go low, we go high. And now she's not going high. She's going low by not showing up. And I think everybody knows that the reasons why she's not showing up. She's standing on business. She has no love lost for Donald Trump. She doesn't like him. And that's the reason why she's not there. There's no other reason why Michelle Obama is not coming to the inauguration, is that it's clearly a protest. So that's why it's a thing. I'm not saying that it's that she is not entitled to do what she did, and everything that Iranetta said is true. Donald Trump and the MAGA crowd is in no position to say anything about her non-presence there when Donald Trump and Melania Trump didn't show up to Joe Biden's inauguration. So this notion that somehow what she's doing is inappropriate when your guy did it 4 years ago, and you can say, well, they did it in protest because they think that, Biden didn't win the election. Whatever the reason, they didn't show up, right? Like we're saying with Michelle Obama, whatever the reason, she ain't showing up. So precedent was already broken. And Donald Trump has been the precedent breaker, ever since he entered the presidential race. He's broken all types of norms, that we followed in this country for decades. So he set the precedent. Michelle Obama not showing up is, hey, returning the favor, right? And so from that standpoint, it's only a thing because it's something for us to talk about. It's only a thing because we get to come on and we get to say things like that. Like, that's why it's a thing. It's interesting to talk about. It's interesting to speculate why she's not there. but I'm not going to go so far as to condemn her or anything like that. In fact, this is only going to make her more popular in Democratic circles, because many people are going to look at her and say she did what her husband couldn't. A lot of people didn't like Obama sitting up at Jimmy Carter's funeral, yucking it up with Donald Trump, and a lot of people were upset with Obama for doing that. And I think the same people who are upset with Barack for doing that are going to love Michelle for not showing up to the inauguration.
And let me say one more thing, Nathan, before I have to, because I have to make this appointment. So I guess for me, so to your point, Kevin, I agree. I know that it's a thing, and I know why it's a thing. Michelle Obama within herself is a thing. But I also take the position that from everything that I have seen about her, she's always stood on what she believed in. The statement, when they go low, you go high. We understand that, and we understand what that means. I think in this situation, she is going high for her personally, for what she believes in. Correct. Her husband can't do, he could do it, but he is too appropriate. We know him as being appropriate and doing what he should do that we believe is politically correct. So he's going to go and he's going to be supportive and he's going to be correct. Just like the conversation that he was having with Trump, what I believe, like the conversation that he was having the other day with Trump. But with Michelle, she does not believe in him. She does not care for who he is. She does not believe in his politics, and she is not going to go and be a part of that. So that is her going, I don't like you. I don't want to be around you. I don't want to have anything to do with you. And I would be hypocritical if I came to your event and supported it, even though that's what you say the American people have asked for. That's fine for the American people. That's not my choice, and I'm not going to subject myself to it. So I think that is an element of going high in a very different way. And we know people are going to complain about it. They're going to complain on everything one way or the other, whatever it is. There's some group that's going to complain, but they have quickly forgotten what happened with Donald Trump 4 years ago at the same time. So that's my 3 cents. It's been great, guys. I'm gonna run now.
All right. Thanks so much, Iranetta.
I'll be listening to you guys though while I'm going.
Okay. Yep. Have a great day and weekend.
All right. Talk soon.
I apologize for stepping away. I had to go take care of a client issue, so I didn't hear the beginning of the conversation. But I just said something different. When the most noticeable fact of Jimmy Carter's funeral was the absence of a chair next to President Obama. And then, I mean, Jimmy Carter, the people's, soft, loving president, the one that everybody got all this great stuff to say about now. I mean, president was a problem, but she wasn't there. And then she said, well, she's in Hawaii taking care of some business. And then a week later, she's not coming. I ain't doing it. I'm not. I just feel something different. I feel some different conversations going on. Now look, Michelle, I'm not playing this game with you, Michelle. I can just hear in the Obama household there have been some pretty aggressive conversations that's going on that are manifesting themselves to us publicly, where she ain't showing up, whether it's because of Trump being there and her not wanting to interact, or her and Barack, got some fist flying. I don't know, but I just sense something different is going on than what we're thinking is going on. That's just my own personal thought about it.
See, I disagree with that, because I think the Obamas are too buttoned up for that. Look, I think Michelle is a smart lady, is a smart woman. I agree. She stands on business and on principles, but she understands that Barack was the president. She was not. Being the first lady and being the president is two different things. And we've gotten into this conversation in previous podcasts about different things about what is presidential. And I think the one thing that you can count on Barack Obama doing 10 out of 10 times is being presidential, regardless of what it looks like. That brother is going to do what he deems to be classy, with honor, with respect, and presidential. Right? The antithesis of what we would see from Donald Trump. So he's going to show up at Jimmy Carter's funeral, even if you don't want to sit down next to Donald Trump and be civil. He's going to show up at the inauguration with the other presidents, sit there and be presidential. He did it. He did it when Trump won the first time. Let's not forget that he came and he sat in the inauguration, rode in the limo with him there. He did, even though Trump would not have done it if the situations had been reversed. Obama did everything in the wake of his first presidential election that a good president should have done. Now, Michelle ain't under that obligation. And I think, Barack is smart. They're both two smart people. And they're not going to mess up what they got over that fool. I can tell you that right now. And I would be so disappointed if the Obamas allowed Donald Trump to come in between them. I think they're smarter than that. I think Barack is like, look, baby, this is what I got to do. I'm not going to say you got to come. You can stay in Hawaii. You ain't got to go. I'm going to support you in that. But and I'll take one for Team Obama and go to the inauguration. But you can stay away. I think that was more, to me, I think that's more probably the conversation that happened than any tension. I'm not saying, Fanon, you can't be right. I'm just saying if that's true, I would be disappointed if in the Obamas if it came to that. It would kind of shake my image of them and how well put together they are. I mean, hey, everybody's human. Every couple's human, I guess. They could be mixing it up, but I'm hopeful that it's more what I think than what you think.
President
Selfishly, I'll admit that I'm hopeful.
Obama is positioning for a diplomatic appointment.
I'm one of those people you was talking about, Kevin. I'm one of those people that you were talking about earlier when you said that there was a lot of people that watched the Jimmy Carter funeral, and when they saw that, Obama was being buddy with Trump, I gotta be honest with you, fellas, that irked me. It irked me because I'm like, stand on, but you can be there. You ain't got to be all friendly and telling jokes with this dude. Don't humanize him. Don't do that. So yeah, I must admit, and I don't know if that's a good part of me or whatever, but yeah, I ain't like it. I didn't like it. So Michelle Obama, I mean, you can make the argument, and I'm not trying to make the argument now, but you can make an argument that even a first lady has some responsibility to live up to certain duties in the office. You can make that argument. I'm not. And I'm not largely because I don't like Trump either. So I'm not upset with her not being there. We all know it, but I'll say it again. When a black woman is fed up, ain't nothing you can do about it. And Michelle is fed up. So it is what it is. And I don't think that Michelle, I agree with Kevin on that. I don't think that Obama and Barack and Michelle are going to let Trump at this point in their relationship. They 2 decades in? Nah, they way past that. They might have had a differences. Obama must show up. Michelle had some wiggle room, so she wiggled out. I'm not upset with it largely because of what happened, 4 years ago. Like you said, Kevin, I mean, he set the precedents. The doors are wide open now. So this is what it is. And all these people out there like Kid Rock who are making jokes with her, and I get it. You can say she opened herself up when she said, when they go low, we go high, which I disagreed then. I always said we go lower. Okay, they can make something out of it. But you can't say you believe in free speech. You can't sit back and rubber stamp and agree with and turn your eyes when he does something you don't like in terms of Donald Trump. And now you got a real problem with Michelle Obama's doing. You like this. You love this when Trump does it. So, okay, now Michelle is doing it. It is what it is. We got 4 years to deal with. I'm not mad with her whatsoever.
But you got to understand though where the MAGA critics and Trump come in. Like this is where they're coming from. It's not even in particular that Michelle Obama is not going to be there. They probably don't even care. They probably don't even really want him there, to be honest with you. What their point is the hypocrisy. So it's the Democrats holding themselves up. So when Trump does it, they make a huge showing of how inappropriate it is. And that's where when they go low, we go high comment comes back to bite Michelle, is when you make such a public display of trying to put him on blast when he does it, saying that, oh, you're low class or you're low this and that, and we're above that. But then you turn around and do it. Like that is what they're pointing out. They're like, oh, okay, well, where's that? When they go low, we go high type stuff. See that all of that stuff that you talk about, that's just BS. That's just a line that you're pushing to the people, because really when you get in your feelings, you do the same thing that you accuse Trump of doing. You in your feelings, so that ain't why you showing up. But when he was in his feelings and he didn't want to show up for Joe Biden, you had something to say. You know what I'm saying? So you can't do that. So it's the hypocrisy that they're calling out more so than the fact that she's not showing up.
No, I think you spot on, bro. You spot on. Do they have a point?
I think what we observed between, Michelle Obama's public statement and the vice president's clear response to the jovial nature of relationship between President Obama and President Trump guarantees that there will not be any black women appointed to cabinet positions in the Trump administration. I mean, there aren't now, and I haven't seen any who are even on the rolls. You know, we talk about the lack of diversity in the, particularly as it relates to African Americans being appointed to the Trump cabinet. There's one black male, two, I believe. We know HUD secretary, and I think recently, what's his name? The former football, Herschel Walker, was named as a diplomat or something in one of these Caribbean nations or something like that. But there's not a single African American woman that I'm aware of that is actually part of the administration. People can correct me if I'm wrong. And then when we see the former First Lady and her response, and then we saw, and everybody saw Vice President Harris turn around and look at Barack when he was talking to Don, and they were, you know, elbowing and stuff. She looked at it, threw her, kind of shook her head and turned back with that look. Like I said, that guarantees that there will not be any African American women close to Donald Trump in this administration, whether one would reject it if they were even offered it. But I think that, you know, there's just an air that he just has a problem with African American women. I mean, I think he has a problem with African American men too. But I mean, I think it's a very clear issue that Trump and his administration have with African American women. And it was when Vice President Harris was running against them.
Look at what happened with Omarosa. You're right about that. You know, I hadn't thought about it, but you're right. No black females. And I agree with you. It's a direct spillover or projection of a lot of the stuff that was happening during the campaign, where they tried to make it seem like, you know, this sister was just dumb, basically, and use that word. Yeah. So you're right about it. No Omarosa this time around. And she ended up turning on Trump, writing a book and talking about how evil he is and all this kind of stuff. So maybe he's kind of like, yeah, I tried that.
And nothing against Omarosa, but even that in and of itself says something that of all of the black women that he could have chosen to be a part of his, you know, his initial administration, his initial that he went with an apprentice, someone he had on his show, The Apprentice. And again, I'm not trying to bring the sister down, but you know that there were many more African American women with much more story history, many more credentials, a much larger background who could have been a part of that administration other than Omarosa. So it just goes back to the general unseriousness of the picks that Trump tends to make. Like he picks people who he's like cool with, or who he thinks, you know, can fit into a mold, and it's crazy. Like people who have no experience or no credentials to do the job. Like that's who he goes for, and then he talks about DEI, you know, like that vilifies DEI, and I'm just like, man, you got a DEI cabinet, bro. That's exactly what you got.
You don't look at it. You're right. I mean, you know, that kind of transitioned into a conversation about, you know, some of these cabinet picks, and now they're going through the process. This week we saw Pete Hegseth, who is nominated to be the defense secretary. And then also a woman named Pam Bondi, who has been nominated to be the U.S. Attorney General. And at least with Pam Bondi, people should look into that. I mean, she's a Trump sycophant who has demonstrated that she'll do almost anything to curry favor with him and the Mar-a-Lago crowd. And Ben Pete Hegseth, of course, you know, plucked from the weekend slot, the weekend rotation on Fox News, and he fits the profile. He's a macho man. He's got allegations, sexual abuse allegations. He's Trump's kind of guy, right? So, and it looks like they will be confirmed. And you know, Trump, his qualifications is, are you a sycophant? Will you do whatever I say? Do I like you? You know, that's what it is. Are you loyal to me? It's not, are you qualified enough to run this position to the maximum efficiency for the American people? It's, are you my person? Right. Period. And that's all that matters. So it goes to show you that he doesn't trust a lot of black people or black women.
Probably ain't got a lot of black people in his circle. I mean, he probably doesn't. I mean, I don't know what the racial makeup is of the Trump organization, period. But I'm willing to bet that unless they serving the tea or cleaning the toilets, there probably ain't a lot of brown folks in the Trump organization. I'm just saying.
There's two groups that are missing pretty clearly from these appointments. One, we talked about it, African American women, but there's one group that's out, but there's another group that is in, and that is Asians, particularly people of Indian descent. I mean, we're talking about Ms. Pam Bondi, if I'm correct. They're looking at her for her background with the civil rights division of the administration previously, as well as, of course, Ramaswamy having a particular place. There are two other people whose names I recall were appointed, or at least are being considered for significant positions, and that's remarkable. I don't know what it means yet, but it's very apparent that there is an open door for that demographic, particularly when the door is closing on other demographics, is what it looks like. Again, I don't know what it means, but there is diversity in the cabinet, but it's interesting to see the diversity and the source of that diversity.
Yeah, but think about the diversity that he's got on. Let's talk about Ramaswamy for a minute, who I happen to think is a fairly intelligent, not even fairly. I mean, he's an intelligent guy, but he bent the knee early on. I mean, Ramaswamy, even when he was running in the Republican primary, he was still kissing Trump's rear end throughout that entire campaign, pledging his allegiance. I think he was the first one who went on record to say, hey, if he was elected president and Donald Trump got convicted, he would pardon him. Like, he came out and said that. So the diversity that is represented in terms of Ramaswamy, he's one of the sycophants that Nathan was talking about. Like, he bent the knee. He was one of the first to bend the knee, right? Now, you look at a brother like Tim Scott, who also bent the knee. And I said this, that brother shuck and jived and did, the coon town. I love you, Donald Trump. I'll never get over that. Tim Scott would never outlive that for me. And any modicum of respect that I have for that man went out the window. I love you, lips poked out. No, I'm just like, come on, bruh.
And Trump played him like a little clown, didn't he?
Come on, bruh.
He did everything but pat him on his head and say, good boy. I mean, it was
come on, bruh, man. Don't you ain't got to do that. I mean, I get that you trying to position yours, and it's like he did all of that and still didn't get nothing, And so if we want to talk about the diversity, I agree with what you're saying. There are certain types of diversity that Donald Trump will have. He'll put Ramaswamy on, who bent the knee, but Tim Scott, who defiled himself in every way that he possibly could, and as a black man, got nothing.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a brother, a congressman down in Florida, who did a very good job.
Yeah,
Byron Donalds did a very good job as a media acolyte during the campaign. Nothing at this point, but 4 years is a long time. You've got midterms. I mean, there's probably going to be a lot of musical chairs being played in the Trump administration if past his prologue. So, Byron Donalds and Tim Scott, they might get something. Looks like Vivek is going to be the next senator from the great state of Ohio.
No,
his name is
Houston.
You what now?
DeWine named Houston this afternoon.
Oh, did he? Okay, cool. Houston.
Yep.
Okay. I don't like that either, but okay. All right. But, DeWine taking care of his people. I get it. Yeah, I don't like that either,
Hey, I will say this. There could have been worse choices. I'm not saying that in terms of like stumping for Husted, but I will say, and again, in this environment, it is, you kind of talk about the lesser of a whole bunch of different evils, but I'm like, if you run it down the list of could have beens, that it could have been worse. I'll just say that about John Husted. It could have been worse. So maybe that's about the best thing that I could say about John Husted getting that. Is it could have been.
And the longer term implications of John Husted, he was also considering a run for governor. And so that governor's race from the Republican side is going to still be a pretty intense battle. And Husted out of it because obviously he's going to maintain his position as a senator over coming back and running for governor. But there's still going to be a significant battle to see who's going to represent the Republican Party statewide.
I misspoke earlier. No, the news isn't that Vivek he's running for governor. I'm sorry, I misspoke. Vivek is running for Ohio governor.
Then that makes
Yeah, you
sense.
just kind of jogged my memory when you said that. So
He did announce that he's running for governor.
I believe so. As I looked at Cincinnati.com, it was on there above the fold on the front page. So I believe so. Yeah.
Once he found out that Houston actually got it, yeah, he said, "All right, that's
yes. I'm a pivot over here."
I think that's going to be an interesting. That's going to be an interesting test if you have an Indian male Republican running against a Jewish white woman for Ohio governor. I think that is going. This is going to be an interesting test of, dare I say, DEI governorship in the state of Ohio. This is going to be a very interesting race.
It is. It's going to be very interesting because as much as Republicans might like the policy, race does matter. And he did step into some hot water on Twitter, and the MAGA core revolted against him. So it'll be interesting to see if he changes his tune, so to speak, his talking points, and then what Ohio voters do. So interesting.
Well, we also anticipate Ohio's Attorney General is going to be running very hard in that primary as well.
Okay, cool. Yeah. It's going to be very interesting.
Yeah.
Well, that's all I got, fellas. I mean, end of the show. I mean, speak now or forever hold your peace. Was there anything that maybe you want to circle back and address, or something that popped up? Sometimes when I hear people talk, it jogs a memory, and I'm like, oh, okay, let me try to, bring that to the conversation. Anything on your mind?
Nothing in particular. I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on with, these bills that the governor passed at the last minute. In fact, we addressed it yesterday with the House bill to charge, which we've been talking about on here. You all have been talking about on here. There's just so much that people need to stay up on. If not, even if they believe, well, I can't do anything about it, or it doesn't affect me personally, man, just knowing what's going on out here helps you to be empowered to help other folks to either fight against it or to just be prepared for the next vote that comes around.
Kevin, anything in your mind, bro?
Yeah, just 3 quick points. First, I just want to thank everybody who, again, I know you do this at the end of every show, but I just wanted to reiterate it. Thank you for everybody who has subscribed, who dials in, who jumps in on the chats. I appreciate all of the comments. I do try to keep an eye on them as they come in. I know we don't get a chance to address every one of them, but, regardless of, what comments you drop in, agree or disagree, we just appreciate your presence. That's the first thing I wanted to say. Second thing, if Donald Trump breaks up the Obamas, then I think it's undeniable that Donald Trump might very well be the most influential person. And I know a couple podcasts ago you had an issue with him being Times Man of the Year. We talked about the influence of that. But if he breaks up the Obamas, as Fanon is speculating, then I gotta say there is no debate. Donald Trump is the most influential cat in maybe in history. I mean, that might not that's hyperbole worthy of Trump. He might very well be. And then the last thing I'll say, this goes back to the last show, man. Since he was a topic, our initial topic, the mayor has shaved the mustache, I heard. So
is that right?
Y'all clowned him last week. I'm not saying he shaved it because you clown. He might have shaved it even before last week's episode and we didn't know it. But I heard through my sources that the mayor no longer has the mustache.
Hey, well, don't mess up a good story with the truth, bro. No, he heard our show and heard our critiques and responded. That's great, because I'm going to be reaching out soon, because I need to have him on hot mic as soon as possible so we can talk about what this means with his immigration declaration with the Trump administration. I'm rhyming. You could tell I'm from the hip hop generation. I'm rhyming on accident, right?
Yeah.
Listen,
hey man, it might have been that villain. It might have been that villain mustache that had him side with Donald Trump on immigration.
Exactly.
That's where it starts.
You know what? That's what it was.
He had going on.
Eureka. That's what it was. It was the stash. And his wife was like, "What in the world did you say? Cut that immediately, sir." And he walks right in there and cut that off. Okay, good.
Nathan, can I just offer before we go?
Absolutely.
I brought it up at the beginning of the show, and I just want to raise it again. All of the planets have already started to line up. We do know that. I'm not making that up. We do know that there was a comet in the sky the other day, and I am convinced that our next president will be sworn in on Monday, and I will be prepared to step into my role once again.
And you know what? I can't think of a better way to end, just like that. Hey, to everybody in the audience, we appreciate you. Have a good weekend, and we'll be